Hey there everybody, AJ back again for the Mighty Gluestick channel with a special bonus video because it's my channel and I do what I want. A homebrew creature for you today, one of the countless millions of species of awakened plants that are so common in the Feywild, Arborea, the wild side of Biotopia, the Outlands, and occasionally Toril, or in the exotic markets of Kalimshan, or further afield in the Sigil, or the City of Brass. These little critters are called the Lurfen. It starts out looking for all the world like some sort of predatory swamp plant at first glance. It appears just like a pitcher plant crossed with a Venus flytrap. It has a basic leaf structure, sort of a vine-like root system, and these long tubes that grow and fill with water that have a waxy inner surface, and the top petals can close in. Once the Lurfen has a tasty morsel trapped inside, they release a sweet smell to lure in insects, and really that's what they were originally trying to trap and feed on. They also have this very unusual method of propagating the seeds, and this is where things get really weird for the Lurfen. When the plant's picture tube is full of food, it produces its seeds, and these are encased in a pod, which is like a plant version of the insect that it trapped and fed on. Basically, it makes a duplicate bug full of Lurfen seeds. This duplicate creature is called a Lurefett. It is capable of whatever mode of transportation the insect that it trapped was able to use, so it can fly, crawl, hop around. It goes off looking for some nice rich soil in a relatively moist but sunny spot where it settles down, digs a little hole, and then releases its seeds. It then just sits there and guards the seeds until they're starting to germinate. Eventually it expires and the decomposition of it provides a little boost to the new Lurfen growth. They're not able to sting or bite or anything, they just make a cricket sort of buzz and move away from the seeds in an erratic path if they're disturbed. They're designed to get predators to chase them, leading them away from the precious Lurfen seeds. But here's where it gets really weird. This ability to mimic other lifeforms is not just restricted to insects. A chance discovery made when some Lurefetts that look like small rodents were discovered buzzing and leaping through the undergrowth by a gnomish ranger on the Feywild one day, long ago. This ranger was fascinated and decided to try to find out where they came from, and in a somewhat foolhardy experiment, taking a thorn and pricking her finger, she dropped some of her blood into a Lurfen flower. She waited. Nothing happened. So she found a beetle, in this case it was a brown bark borer, and dropped it into the Lurfen tube, which caused it to snap shut. Intrigued, the gnome ranger settled down and made a camp not too far from the Lurfen, throwing a fishing line into the swamp to hopefully catch a nice meal for herself. Well, the fishing was good. The Lurfen really wasn't doing very much, so she kind of forgot about it and carried on with her travels. A few weeks later, she happened back across the same swamp and checked on the Lurfen, which appeared to have died, but the ground it was growing around was now swollen into a hump, like it was being pushed up from below. Of course, the ranger had to investigate. She was travelling then with another ranger now, and had explained the unusual discovery of an imitated moss rat, so the two rangers decided to dig up the mound and find out what was growing down below. Sure enough, it was a gnome-sized tuber. A plant imitation of the gnome herself, no doubt full of Lurfen seeds. They tried to be as careful as they could, but it seemed like the Lurfen had died before the Lurefett was fully grown, or perhaps the effort was too much for the little plant, and it died of natural causes. The two rangers had more important things to do than mess around with Lurfens, so they carried on their way, but they did stop and let the local druid circle know what they had found, and then left it at that. Several weeks later, the two rangers vanished without a trace and were never heard from again. But they had told some associates that of the strange incident with the Lurfen, and that they had told the local druid circle all about it. Alarmed friends and family suspected foul play and sought investigation by offering what they could to a travelling hero who had gathered his companions to head into the swamp anyway to investigate. It was not too long before very strange creatures were seen wandering out of the swamp, and shortly after, the heroes returned, riding beasts that seemed to be made out of plants. They had sad news. The Druid Circle was responsible for the death of the 2 gnomish rangers, and it seemed that they had fallen sway to some evil power, but nothing that a willingness to axe first and ask questions later couldn't fix. So all the rangers and the druids were dead now. The rangers were avenged, and the druids' journals, full of creepy experiments and crazy plants, were for sale. The heroes were well paid, but still lamenting that druids were absolutely terrible when it came to looting their treasure hoards. That book contained the secrets of nourishing a Lurfen and ensuring that it could make a Lurefett copy of almost any creature. The Lurefetts are still just plants, but they can be capable of some remarkably sophisticated emulation of whatever creature they look like. They can be up to large size and have physical strength similar to the original creature, but still less dexterity, never more than 8, and they have a higher constitution, always higher than 12, or if the original had a constitution of 12 or higher, the Lurefett will have that constitution plus 1 to a maximum of 20. They're far less intelligent, with a score no higher than 2 for those who were spawned from an animal, 3 if the original was an intelligent creature. They have a wisdom no higher than 10 and a charisma no higher than 6. The Lurefett has the same hit points and speed as the original creature, none of its other abilities aside from purely physical attacks and movement. They also can't speak, and the only noise they can make is that same cricket-sounding buzz, which is such a characteristic of the Lurefetts. Those who have dealt with the more intelligent Lurefetts swear that they can convey some sort of basic emotion with the way they buzz, such as alarm or satisfaction. Lurefetts have a short life expectancy, only a couple of months at most, less if they encounter a perfect spot to put down their Lurfen seeds. The drive to find a seeding spot and dig down and plant the seeds is very strong, but it can be overridden with spells that can command plants. Otherwise, they are immune to mind-affecting spells that would work on the animals that they look like. They are also immune to poison and diseases that do not harm plants. They don't require any food, just a small amount of water every few days to keep them in good shape, and they never sleep. Lurefett can rest under the ground for quite some time if the Lurfen parent plant is kept just on the edge of having enough nutrients and water to complete the germination of these outlandish seed pods. Only one person has tried to eat a Lurefett. They reported that it tasted nightmarishly bad and hurt at every stage of digestion and eventual evacuation. They said they would not feed it to their worst enemy, and from that day on they were violently nauseous whenever they smelled pickled cabbage. Lurfen must be kept moist. They can tolerate soil with quite poor nutrients. They do not like as much shade as you would expect from a predatory swamp plant. They are used to a very warm climate, and frost will kill them. They take about 8 months to grow from seed, which will have pitcher flowers ready to duplicate a creature within a couple of months of reaching their full size. One plant will produce several pitcher flowers, but they can only produce one Lurefett per year. Lurfen can live for 5 years in ideal conditions and with proper care to safely remove the Lurefetts without damaging the Lurfen parent. Lurfen sell very well across the exotic markets of the multiverse. They are much sought after, and the original swamp where they originated in somewhere in the Feywild has always been something of a closely guarded secret or mystery. So you can use these creatures in your campaign to your heart's content. Definitely something of a subject of much fascination to a druid perhaps, or a ranger who may be related to that group of rangers who have that encounter, or some interesting folklore. Might be an encounter that you incorporate into your Feywild adventures. The player characters could be the ones who discover the Lurfen in the first place. Or, of course, it could be an exotic mount that is sold to the characters with great promises to its prowess and longevity, when in actual fact it's going to expire soon after, because they don't realise what sort of creature the Lurefett actually is. I would advise against giving them any sort of special abilities and things. I've kind of got them in the mind of it's an interesting thing that you can throw in and let your players come up with innovative ways to use them. You really don't need to give them any special sort of abilities or attacks or habits and things. They're good for riding mounts or things that are like beasts of burden or sort of suicide attack plant creatures. And of course, they make for an interesting tool that you can throw to your players and say, look, do with it what you will. You never know, they could come up with some really outlandish ideas, and I'm always fascinated with what player characters and, well, the players at the table can come up with when I give them little bones to pick at, like this one. Anything that sort of feeds their creativity is a good idea. Like, subscribe, check out my Patreon for some exclusive content and all the full scripts for these videos, buy some merchandise, wear your geek with pride. Don't forget I've got the deeply nerdy t-shirts and products available. Check out Patron Blades for a mighty smooth shave, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.